Welcome back. In this video, I finish off the ceiling in the office and toilet area. I start off by putting up a timber frame, and I landed on using this timber cladding tongue and groove. So it's about 11 mil. It's actually Baltic pine, and it has two sides, one with a groove, one without. And I've decided to use this side with the groove. And I didn't want to put it up like this without having it whited out a little bit. So I tried a few things. This is so-called whitewash, and on the left there's stain with whitewash, and the whitewash literally did nothing. Here's the same thing attempted, just with some paint I had laying around. I thinned it right out, and you can see on the left it's streaky, but on the right there, I think that's the finish I'm after, where you can still see the grain through the white, and it just provides a ceiling that doesn't look as closed in when it's white. So I put one coat over everything, and I paint it obviously before it goes up. I think this is the way to go. You can get right into the tongue with this, and you can just touch it up later if you need to, and it's obviously a lot easier than doing it once it's bolted up. Good thing about this is water-based paint dries pretty quick. I'll get them all prepped, and you can see some of the knots and grain patterns still through that paint, which is what I wanted to give it that rustic look. I further insulate this ceiling, so I use earth wool, and this is R4. So anybody in a country measuring in imperial, R4 in Australia is in metric, so to convert that to imperial, you got to times by pretty much 6, so that's equivalent to an R22, and it's nearly 200 millimeters thick, and it fits the space I have between the purlin perfectly. I use some strapping. I do obviously use the right PPE. You probably don't need, a full suit like this, but it's overhead, and no fibers are good for you. So even though it's classed as non-hazardous, I'd rather not deal with it. Cutting this stuff is really good. It's so nice to cut. Just one straight cut with a Stanley knife, and you can see that it just cuts beautifully. So I get all the insulation up, and that timber I added there just obviously gives me something that I can nail into. So I'll start with the toilet area first, and you can sort of get a bit of a look of what it's going to be like. These are the downlights I've used. Now, if you're going to use downlights, look for that symbol. This is an IC4, which really means that it's designed to have insulation directly in contact with it. And the benefit of that is you don't interfere with the insulation efficiency. So they're only low wattage LEDs. Now, once I got into the main office area, these boards are about 5.5 meters long, so I needed a bit of help, and I made up this tool as well. So when you knock tongue and groove in, you don't want to hammer onto that tongue, you'll damage it in no time. So I just used an offcut and then used that hammer against the end of the board, and it worked really well. You'll see in the video I made some brackets to hold them into position, and those were priceless really. They've saved so much time, and just helps hold it into position, and you just go along and progressively hammer it into the groove. Now you can see here there's that bracket. That was a real win using those. They were reasonably tight, and it was a bit time consuming. As I went along, I used my laser just to mark out where the lights were going to go. And when you're putting lights like this up, you really do want your power supply or your outlet to reach the hole like this. So when it comes to changing the light some stage, you can actually access it quite easily. And as I said, with the insulation being IC4, I could just stick it in there and have the insulation directly on top of that light without any problem. And I've selected warm white lights as well, because I like that yellower colour. I put a dimmer on the lights, and in the end, in that office area I've gone with 8 of those total, so it's working out pretty good. Chooks can't seem to help themselves, so I don't know what they're looking for, but they always coming in the workshop. This is about maybe getting close to halfway, and it's just the same process over and over. Now I did start applying the nail so they weren't visible, so right on the edge of the tongue, But what I found is some of them almost split, and what I decided in the end is I just nailed it straight through the center section, and I just filled the holes later and I'll patch the paint up. I think that's a more secure way of doing it, but it's individual choice what you want to do. Now I'm going to have a fireplace in my office. You would have seen in the previous video the pot belly was just too hot, so in the end I just purchased a new one, and this one should be doing a great job. So I put it in here because I need the position so I can cut the hole in the ceiling, and then once I do my floor finish it'll be ready just to go straight in. Now this is just doing the last section. This strapping was really useful. It's very cheap and it just holds that insulation in place. There's a hole for the chimney, and that'll make that job a bit easier later. Now this is one job I did need a bit of help on, so it was great to have a few spare hands around, and there's just no way you can do it, or it probably is, but it'll be very hard to do a job like this one person.
It's not in.
My wife's always a good laugh. So that's just nail gunning them. As you can see in the middle, I just touch those little holes up afterwards. And this is with all the boards done. And I hadn't seen this done before, but I thought I'd try to route a hole out, because this is about a 300mm or 12-inch hole. And let's put a small router bit in there and use the bolt as a pivot, and yeah, it worked really good. And you can see the cowling that's going to go over there a bit later. Well, there's the ceiling done. Let me know if there's any questions, and in the next video I'm going to get a start on preparing a very unique floor. I'll see you next time.